Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 241 with Dr. Michael Greger. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when he shares with us how not to die from chronic disease and how to increase our health and longevity. I also loved it when he shares his very few supplement recommendations and when we spoke about the all-important vitamin B12 and how to get that in your diet. But there is so much more knowledge, wisdom, and inspiration that you get in the full episode. So to listen to the full podcast and get all the info in the show notes, head on over to melissaambrosini.com/241 right now. Michael, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. So I love your story about your grandma. So for those that don't know this story or don't know about you, can you share that story about your grandma with us?
Sure. I was just a kid when the doctor sent my grandmother home in a wheelchair to die. She was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease. She already had so many bypass operations. Surgeons basically run out of plumbing at some point. Confined to a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. But then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. It talks about Frances Greger, my grandmother. They wheeled her in, and she walked out. She was given her medical death sentence at age 65, but thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this earth till age 96, to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I wrote the book, How Not to Die, and why 100% of the proceeds I get from all my books are all donated to charity. I just want to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family.
Yeah, I love that about your books. There's no agenda. You're not trying to convert people. You're not trying to make money from your books or your website or your speaking or even your products. You're simply presenting the scientific facts and letting people decide. And in your books, you cover how not to die, but from basically all modern day killers such as heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's, and even suicidal depression. So I want to know, how do we do it? How do we not die from those things?
Well, it's not how to not die, but how not to die, as in, prematurely, in pain after a long chronic disabling illness. And the good news is we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behavior. So, I do have an agenda, but the agenda is to make people healthy.
Yes, exactly. And the thing that makes you stand out and rise above the noise is the pure volume of scientific data you have and the research that you've done. So, how many peer-reviewed research papers do you think that you have read in your lifetime? Because there's so much information out there. There's so much information. There's so much noise out there. And there's a lot of people are very confused. But what I love about you is that you're just delivering the data, the science. So how many papers do you think you've actually read?
So my new book, which will be out in December, How Not to Diet on Weight Loss. The obesity literature, there's about 500,000 papers in the peer-reviewed English language medical literature, about 100 new ones published every day. And so, you go to sleep, you're just like hopelessly behind. So every year, so I'm just looking at the last year. So every year I go through all the medical literature, see all the new stuff. So last year I downloaded, categorized, annotated, and read 69,298
Whoa.
papers. Now, of course, that's the whole team. We have 96 full-time volunteers who just churn through the literature. And so that gives me access to anything everywhere. I have people at major universities on multiple continents who can just pull things. I have a volunteer who goes to the National Library of Medicine for me, the largest medical library in the world, and can scan old papers that aren't online. And so I just have I'm in this privileged position to have this unparalleled access to the science. It's like I mean, because really it goes back to the story with my grandma. I mean, so Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues proved that heart disease could be reversed with diet and lifestyle changes alone. Arteries opened up without drugs, without surgery, just a healthy enough plant-based diet back July 23rd, 1990. So this was the summer 1990 in the most prestigious medical journal in the world, The Lancet. Yet look, here in the States, hundreds of thousands continue to needlessly die from what we learned decades ago was a reversible condition. And so, wait a second, if effectively the cure to our number one killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients, but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. That's why I started nutritionfacts.org, because that was the tool I wish I'd had when I was in medical school to cut through all the nonsense and non-science out there and get to the best available balance of evidence of how the best feed ourselves and our family.
Yes, exactly. So have you seen any science that shows animal products extend your life and reverse disease and aging?
No. I mean, the such studies don't exist. But yeah, no. In fact, if you look at the longest living, populations around the world, the so-called blue zones, those with, for example, the greatest percentage of centenarians, one of the things that they all share in common, kind of the Venn diagram where they all come together, is a predominantly plant-based diet. And in fact, the longest formerly studied population in the world, don't eat any meat at all. These Seventh-day Adventists around Loma Linda, California. In fact, they're the only blue zone that continues to this day. All these other blue zones, like in Greece or Okinawa, 50 years ago, they had great longevity. But now, of course, as Kentucky Fried Chicken has moved in, actually, the Okinawans are now the fattest population in Japan as opposed to the healthiest. But the one blue zone that continues even in the modern day are these folks that don't eat any meat at all. Of course, that's not all they do. They also tend not to smoke, eat lots of fruits and vegetables, and have other healthy lifestyle behaviors. But diet is part of the reason why they live 10 to 14 years longer than the rest of us.
That's amazing. So, are there any essential supplements on a whole foods plant based diet that you recommend? And if so, what are they? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I'm curious to know if it's an actual problem with the diet or whether it's an issue with our food supply in the soil.
Well, the critical nutrient is vitamin B12. So there's two vitamins that are not made by plants. The first of which is vitamin D, made by animals such as ourselves when we walk outside. It's the sunshine vitamin. Those in Australia should have no problem getting all they need. Of course, they actually have to walk outside. But those of us who live most of our lives indoors or for whatever reason don't get sufficient sunlight, then we may need to supplement our diets with vitamin D. The only other vitamin not made by plants is not made by animals either, vitamin B12, made by little microbes that blanket the earth. So, yeah, we may have been able to get all the B12 we needed drinking out of a mountain stream or well water or something. But now we chlorinate the water supply to kill off any bacteria. So we don't get a lot of B12 in our water anymore. Don't get a lot of cholera either. That's a good thing that we live in a nice sanitary world. But, our fellow great apes get all the B12 they need eating bugs, dirt, and feces. I prefer supplements. So one 2,500 microgram supplement of cyanocobalamin, the cheapest, most stable source, once a week is all you need. Costs less, here in the States, costs less than $5 a year. Get all the B12 you need, but critically important for anyone on a plant-based diet.
Do you think that if a woman is trying to fall pregnant or is pregnant, that the B12 needs to be increased?
It's critically important. I mean, to get it, period. 2,500 micrograms once a week or 250 a day. More than enough B12 than anybody needs. It's water soluble. Just pee out the excess. You don't have to worry about getting too much, but that's more than enough for pregnant and breastfeeding women, but critically important for them. See, when someone starts eating plant-based later in life, let's say you've been eating kind of the standard Western diet your whole life, and all of a sudden you wake up and you start eating healthier. Well, you have B12 that's stocked up, particularly in your liver. And so it could be weeks, months, even years before you run into B12 deficiency problems. Whereas an infant particularly if the mother had low store, starts out basically from nothing and can very rapidly develop vitamin B12 deficiency if they're not getting a source. And the best source of which, of course, is breast milk from a mother who's supplementing with vitamin B12. But it could be very rapid and very tragic. So it's especially important for pregnant and breastfeeding women to ensure regular, reliable source of vitamin B12.
So do you think everyone should be supplementing with a B12?
Well, I mean, so for example, the American Academy of Neurology suggests everybody at age 50 the entire global population should start supplementing their diet with vitamin B12. And that's just because even if you eat meat, which contains B12 because of the bacteria in the digestive tracts of the animals, even if you eat meat, our body starts to lose the ability to extract B12 from meat. And so because it's so critically important, the recommendation is that everybody at age 50 start taking B12 regardless of what you eat. And so the recommendation for those eating plant-based is just to start immediately, start before that age, and make sure you get B12 at all stages of the life cycle.
What about fortified foods like nutritional yeast?
Oh, yeah. So there's two ways to get B12. You can take a supplement or eat B12 fortified foods. My only caution with nutritional yeast is there's this misconception that all nutritional yeast has B12. And that's not true. B12 is actually added to nutritional yeast. It doesn't have it naturally. It's grown on a medium that contains B12 and it sucks it up. If you grow it on a medium that doesn't have B12, in fact, most nutritional yeast doesn't have B12. It has to specifically say on the label that has vitamin B12 and it doesn't. It probably doesn't. And so there's this false sense of security. Oh, I don't have to worry about B12 because I eat nutritional yeast. Well, only if nutritional yeast specifically has B12 in it. But there are lots of products now, some healthier than others. There's a type of tea, I think Celestial Seasonings makes a tea called Tension Tamer that actually has B12 added to it. A number of, for people that eat processed plant foods like soy milk and veggie dogs, that kind of thing. A lot of the plant-based meats and milks also has B12 added to it. The important thing is just to get a regular, reliable source. My concern with it's added a lot of breakfast cereals, which is a lot of sugary junk. And so rather than going out of your way to buy these processed foods, probably the easiest thing is to stick to the healthiest foods, whole foods, and just get it in supplemental form.
Okay, cool. So can you tell us now about your daily dozen? What's that?
Oh, yeah. So, on nutritionfacts.org, there's over 1,000 videos, which is great since I'm able to cover so many topics, but it's a little overwhelming. I do record these like annual year in review type videos where I go through the science in 12 months chunks. But, the reason I wrote How Not to Die is really wanted to compile all the most compelling evidence in one place. And so to that end, I have chapters in the role diet, may plan preventing, arresting, reversing each of our top 15 killers, backed up by, about 3,000 scientific citations. But I didn't want to just write a reference book, right? I wanted to be a practical guide on translating this mountain of data into, day-to-day decisions. And so that's what became the second half of the book, where I centered my recommendations around a daily dozen checklist of all the things that try to fit into my daily routine. So, for example, berries every day, the healthiest fruits; greens every day, the healthiest vegetables; legumes, a tablespoon of ground flax seeds, quarter teaspoon of turmeric; the best beverages, the best sweeteners; how much to exercise every day. Really, all just trying to inspire people to try to include some of the healthiest of healthy foods into their daily diets. It's available as an app, as a free app on iPhone and Android, where it's like a daily checklist, and you can see how many healthy foods you can check off every day and track your progress. And it will update at the end of the year when How Not to Diet comes out, and there'll be you can switch over into weight loss mode, and there'll be an additional checklist, my 21 tweaks to accelerate body fat loss, in addition for those who are interested.
Oh, awesome. Can't wait to read that. Yeah, my husband has the app and he's the one that showed
Oh,
me.
great.
Yeah, he is a massive fan.
Smart man.
Yeah. Your book really shifted a lot for him, and he says, if there's one book that every single person should read, it's this book. It's just full of all the data, all the science, which is amazing. So you've got it all in one place. I have a friend who actually carries your book around with him. Like that's my friend Simon Hill. He has an amazing podcast called Plant Proof, and he
Oh, neat.
carries his book around with him wherever he goes.
Oh, that's funny. And hey, it's good exercise too. It's
Yes. Yeah, because it's so big. It's like a brick. But how is it different to how not to diet?
So, How Not to Die was focused on preventing, arresting, reversing the leading killer diseases. How Not to Diet is optimal weight loss. So it's split up into basically 4 different sections. The first section of which is the causes, consequences, and solutions tried to date. So basically, I explore what exactly happened in the late 1970s around the entire world that triggered this obesity epidemic. What are the health consequences? And then, talk about all the, kind of traditional approaches: bariatric surgery, diet, drugs, weight loss supplements, etc. The second part, I go into the 17 ingredients that I discovered to construct an ideal weight loss diet. Originally, as per the title, I was just going to go, chapter on each of the, current kind of fad diets and talk about what the science says. But I realized, look, it's like playing whack-a-mole. By the time the book came out, it would already be outdated. There'd be all sorts of new diets out there. So I decided instead, I'd just say, well, look, what are the criteria that you can use to compare any future diet to and see how many criteria? And so I came up with 17. And then part 3 of the book is saying, okay, what existing diet on the planet, or what can we cobble together to best match all 17? And then finally, part 4 is the weight loss booster section, where the 21 tweaks comes from, where I talk about all the different ways to accelerate weight loss, regardless of what you eat, and not just particular foods, but talk about chronobiology and meal timing and combining, and tweaks to exercise and intermittent fasting and all sorts of ways to accelerate body fat loss. And so it's probably the biggest research project my team's ever taken on. But the harder it was, the more I realized how important it was to get it out there. Here in the States, it's published December 10th. It's available for pre-order now. Super excited to get this into people's hands. I really think it'll help.
What did you notice within yourself when obviously your grandma lived an extra, how many years was it? 31 years?
Yeah.
So obviously she experienced huge differences. So what have you noticed within yourself since you embarked on eating real food?
Yeah, I mean, they wheeled her in and she walked out. Within 3 weeks, she was walking 10 miles a day. I mean, and then,
Wow.
her whole life was different. But it's interesting at that time, it didn't really make much of an impact on me. I mean, that's what I assumed happened. As a little kid, you go to the doctor and you get better. I mean, that's what doctors do, right? And so, I mean, little did I know how revolutionary it was at that time in history. We had no idea heart disease was reversible. I mean, the common knowledge was just get worse, 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 then you die, like diabetes. Many still think type 2 diabetes. It's just something that gets progressively worse. You lose your vision, amputations, go on dialysis, die. But now we know, no, we can reverse type 2 diabetes with a healthy enough diet by treating the cause. So in terms of me, boy, it was 29 years ago, long time ago. And so I think I was so young that I don't remember feeling much of a difference. But my arteries inside, I'm sure, could tell you differently. So by age 9, those studies done here in the States, by age 9, nearly all kids raised on the standard American diet already have what are called fatty streaks building up inside their arteries. That's the first stage of atherosclerosis, the number one killer of men and women. They turn into plaques in our 20s, get worse in our 30s, and then can start killing us off. So if there's anyone listening to this older than age 10, then the question is not whether or not you should eat healthy to prevent heart disease. Maybe you should start eating healthy to reverse the heart disease you likely already have, whether you know it or not.
Yes. This is why we need to embark on eating real healthy food today. Because there's this stuff we've got to reverse and we have to do it now.
And you say, well, wait a second. If it can be reversed, why don't I just eat crap my whole life and then, oh, fine, I get heart disease. Well, then I'll just start eating healthy and reverse it. The problem is for most people that die from heart disease, a little over 50%, particularly women, the first sign is what's called sudden cardiac death, meaning that's defined as death within your first symptom in someone without known heart disease. So you have no idea you even have heart disease. And then within minutes of that first symptom, you're dead. So an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure because there is no cure for dead.